Hello, everyone. This is ARTEEN ZAHIRI, the host of the Meet the Entrepreneur podcast. In today's episode, we are speaking with James Bradley Morris, the co-founder and chief operating officer of StudioSesh, a San Francisco-based end-to-end platform for booking and listing creative spaces. Brad, please take it away.
Definitely. So my name's Brad Morris. I'm the co-founder and COO at StudioSesh.com. The way you can think of StudioSesh is Airbnb, but for creative space. So if you're a artist, a musician, a designer, basically go onto our platform and book a venue or studio or gallery or other type of listing, which usually entails equipment, and utilize that as a resource to help you get known, grow, and succeed as an artist.
Awesome. Thanks for the rundown. So, Brad,
Of course.
how about we take a step back before you founded StudioSesh? Let's say, where did you grow up? What were your interests like when you were younger, and what made you decide to venture off and start this kind of business?
Definitely. So I grew up in the East Bay in the San Francisco Bay Area in a small town called Danville, California. I went to high school, Monte Vista High School, and a lot of my interests have always entailed golf, video games, and then also a little bit of app development and coding, which kind of branched off from video games. That's what really sparked my interest in technology and kind of what brought me into the tech industry. Because when I was in high school, um, I liked to play a lot of Call of Duty and actually hacked Call of Duty. And I actually got banned from playing by the game developer. And when that happened, I was like, hey, like maybe I shouldn't hack anymore. Maybe this isn't ethical. Maybe it's going to get me in. Yeah, maybe it's going to get me in trouble.
Yeah.
But like that's what was really exciting, because like I take the disc and like put it into my mom's computer and like play with the code a little bit, and like it was really fascinating and really cool to just change a few lines of code and then just completely own online, right? So it was pretty entertaining. But like that like moment when I got like banned, like when my account got banned, um that's what really got me into coding, and I taught myself front end web development. And this was probably around my senior year of high school, and then going into college at the University of San Francisco. I was a web developer intern for the university in the web services department. And while I was there, um, we were building out the school's first student mobile app, and I was able to take part in kind of like the strategy and the QA and the testing and just like the main rollout to the incoming freshman orientation class of I think this was 2016 or 2017. And we rolled it out to the freshman class, and it was a huge success, and everyone enjoyed the app. And kind of through this experience, like I was already, interested in coding and web development, but that's what really kind of captured me into app development. So at that time, I was a business major at the University of San Francisco, and I decided to take up a minor in computer science to kind of more hone my interests with like my technical passion. And it was, I think, during this minor, I took a class called Computing Mobile Apps in the Web, and it was mainly using um, this technology made by Google. I forgot exactly what it's called, but it's like super entry level Java development to build out Android applications. And I eventually dropped this minor because I just kind of did a lot of app development in my free time. But for my final in this class, I was paired with Johnny Henriquez, who is now my co-founder at StudioSesh. And he kind of sat down with me like for coffee after we finished a class, and we're talking about what we wanted to do after college, and we kind of found out that we're both entrepreneurial. And he said like, hey, I've kind of been trying to get this idea off the ground for a while. I want to know if maybe you wanted to kind of join in. And I was like, yeah, tell me about it. So it started off as um, a website called Incendium, which means wildfire in Latin, because we wanted artists to spread like wildfire. And it was more so like a Facebook for artists, for artists to network with other artists and potentially agents and talent seekers as well. And then it kind of morphed into kind of more like a LinkedIn for artists, where it was kind of the same networking platform, but artists could have a portfolio. And after a little bit more iteration, we decided like, hey, I think it would be the most valuable if there's a web platform where people could actually book resources in order to succeed. Because a lot of how most artists succeed is access to resources, access to connections, access to equipment that would more or less allow them to succeed. For example, like a musician that wants to like have access to some high quality music equipment that they may or may not be able to afford. So by having a platform where people can book this out on like an hourly rate rather than having to purchase it on their own, we saw that as really valuable. So that's the point where Incendium morphed into StudioSesh. And after it morphed into StudioSesh, we kind of did a little bit of initial market research to kind of assess a product market fit. We built out a mobile app, and it gained a lot of traction with a lot of our friends who are artists. And then at that point, we co-founded the company and raised a pre-seed round and had a developer build out our web platform. And that's where we are today.
Awesome. So when was that pre-seed round held?
That pre-seed round was held in 2019. I'd say like April or May, like immediately after we founded it. Because what happened was over the course of 2018 is when we built out this app on iOS. And after we built out that app, we had like a little launch in a small gallery in a Mission District in San Francisco, and this was in February of 2019, and a lot of people really enjoyed it, and it was a really great launch because a lot of people like we had a lot of conversations with these artists, and there's a couple of venue owners in attendance too, and they said, hey, like this would be really great if it was a web platform. And a connection that we had at Bain Capital said that, especially since there was this B2B aspect of the platform, we were dealing with businesses. He said, hey, it would probably be best if you had this hosted on like a desktop app or a website as a web platform rather than a mobile app, because most businesses probably aren't going to be going around on their Android devices or their iOS devices and and managing a venue suite. So that's when we decided, okay, this needs to be a web platform. And we already spent like, I think 6 or 7 months teaching ourselves app development. We didn't really want to postpone that and make another 6 or 7 months to teach ourselves, full web application development. So at that point, that's kind of when we decided that the best thing to do was to raise a pre-seed, raise some money from friends and family, and have someone build it out for us. And that's what happened.
For sure. So you guys are just, pretty young company, only a little bit over a year old.
Exactly. Yeah.
How big is your team right now, and what's kind of everyone's specialty?
So right now we're a 2-person team. It's Johnny, the co-founder and CEO, and myself, the co-founder and COO.
Yes.
And then in terms of our development team, they're a software development firm called Capital Numbers. They're based out of Kolkata, India. And we found them online and found that they're a really high quality, affordable, really scalable developer. And we built a really good business relationship with them, and they built out a really solid platform. And I think that for the time being, they're going to be like our initial technical team until we raise additional funding and start kind of concentrating the majority of our hiring effort stateside.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, they did a fantastic job with your web platform. It works great on the mobile web browsers and on desktop and laptop browsers. So it's definitely a nice, sleek look. They did a good job. Did they also make the logo for you guys?
We actually built that out ourselves.
Oh, nice.
And I think we use like Sketch or some sort of design studio to kind of build that out.
Cool.
Yeah.
And that brings me to my next question. You mentioned it was originally called Insandium. Whose idea was it to change it to StudioSesh?
I think it was both of our ideas. I think that we kind of realized it was hard to spell, so probably wouldn't have the best, search engine optimization, and it was also kind of hard to pronounce too. And there's also kind of that underlying meaning of it that I don't think many people would catch. So that's kind of when we decided, like, hey, we needed something simple, and we just kind of started thinking about names, and then we just ended up calling it StudioSesh.
Right, for sure. So who would you say is, your biggest target market? I know you guys are a multi-sided platform. So who would you be your potential users?
So on the artist side, I'd say, really creatives of any age that are kind of amateur and starting out, not that many access to resources, and, just really looking for something to take them to the next level. That's who I'd say is our target market at the moment. Specifically kind of like younger artists, like in their 20s and 30s, based out of the Bay Area. On the venue side, I would say that probably the best target market that we're looking at right now that we've already onboarded with are small businesses. So like small music venues, maybe music stores that have some spare like studio space or music equipment in the back room that they might use for music lessons, that like they don't monetize after hours or on the weekends, and someone could book out their studios for a couple of hours on the weekend and be able to record a hit or something like that. So that would be our target market for the venue side.
Got it. Makes sense. So Brad, correct me if I'm wrong, but your co-founder Johnny, he was the one who he has experience as a musician, and he was kind of the one that I guess was inspired to start a platform like this, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about Johnny's background in music?
Yeah, definitely. So Johnny is a guitarist, and he grew up in Sunnyvale, California. And I'd say like throughout his life, like he played in like a small band, and a lot of his close friends were musicians themselves and other types of creatives such as designers, glass blowers, and other musicians as well. And like he kind of had like his phase where he kind of tried to get off the ground as an artist as well. And I think that just having conversations with his friends on a daily basis, he kind of came to this conclusion that like, hey, artists are kind of that forgotten kind of niche in our society, right? Because you have LinkedIn that caters to professionals, but I think that at that point, like, you realize, hey, it takes a lot for an artist to really get their voice out there and succeed. I mean, we kind of take it for granted, listen to our favorite artists on the radio, and maybe walk into a museum and like look at some pieces that we really appreciate. But the amount of effort, a lot of time that it kind of takes like in the dark to get to that point is very difficult. And in a sense, it's almost kind of being like an entrepreneur. It's like you don't really get your voice out there until like you've worked, really hard on something for a year or two, or even like a decade, right? So I think that's what really inspired him to kind of build something out that initially was for his close friends. And then like when I met him in college, like I had some friends as well that were musicians. I mean, I'm a pianist myself, right? So when I kind of initialized like the first conversation with them, we just kind of both realized like, hey, like this is something that's common across both of our friend groups, which are all creatives. And we really began to see kind of like the big picture and how this would be valuable to others, because our friends kind of told their friends, and the word kind of spread around. A lot of people said like, hey, like, yeah, like this is something that I totally use. Like, why isn't it available yet? And that's what I think was the initial motivator that really kind of pushed us to create this platform and found this company.
Yeah, awesome. I think it's great that you said it yourself. You guys are really serving this underserved market, where there's
Yeah,
definitely a lot of potential there for sure.
yeah, really, really niche. And honestly, like kind of going into the tech space, I never really thought that I'd be like in like a niche like on the artist side. I think like a lot of some ideas that I always thought about like in high school and college were like B2B products, or like consumer apps and such, because that was kind of my focus. But when we saw this like opportunity and decided that it would be like not just a great benefit to artists to get their voice out and to gain exposure, but also small businesses, like helping them grow as well, is like where we really saw this value.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Now to move on to kind of a very relevant topic. Obviously,
Yeah.
the COVID-19 pandemic has really affected all industries. You guys, at your core, are a venue listing and booking platform. I know you guys have other features for studios as well, but
Yeah.
right now, with social distancing and lockdowns, they're really the demand for booking venues is obviously close to zero right now. I know some
Yeah.
areas are easing up, but how have
Mhm.
you guys kind of navigated through this challenge, and what's your outlook of when things are kind of open up, and what have you been doing to keep yourselves going throughout the challenges right now?
That's a really good question. Just before the pandemic, we're able to kind of start a lot of conversations with our first businesses and onboard our first businesses, and we're gaining a lot of traction. It was a really exciting time for us. And then in mid-March, once the pandemic hit, to be honest, it did take a lot of wind out of our sales. There was some people saying like, hey, like we can't focus on getting our listings up right now. We got to apply for small business loans. We got to figure out how to keep ourselves financially afloat. And even some initial businesses that we talked to that were interested, that ended up creating accounts, like had to close their doors permanently. And it was really demotivating. But as we kind of thought about next steps, we realized that, hey, like once things get closer to reopening, I think that and people kind of want to begin to get outside more as well, like especially during this time. Um, StudioSesh is not only an asset to artists, but it's just as much of an asset to small businesses that really need um, whatever they can to kind of get the proper footing and get back into the market, and make as much money as they can as they kind of start to get out of this kind of rut of this pandemic. So what we've started to do now that everything's easing up is kind of restart these conversations with these venues that we had to stop a couple of months ago, as they kind of needed some time to figure out what to do. But yeah, that's the next push forward. Like the conversations have started mainly with the small businesses that we initially started conversations with, and there was a couple of medium-sized businesses that initially rejected us because they're like, oh yeah, we already have like Salesforce or like a CRM. I mean, I don't personally think that like StudioSesh is like a CRM, but they said like, oh yeah, we already have like a platform for this. But the problem is that because their venue usually commands a much higher head count, they're not able to open for another 2 or 3 months until California goes into the phase 4 of reopening. So that kind of opened up another opportunity for us where we're like, hey, like maybe you guys can open your doors like on a person by person, booking by booking basis, and be able to make some money for the time being until you're able to reopen, and just kind of initialize like a first look and business relationship with them. So that's kind of our status for the time being.
Yeah, that's a good strategy. It's a new opportunity that you wouldn't have had before. So that's the silver lining of it. And just overall, I think you make a great point that for small businesses, which a lot of them have gotten hit especially hard, you're giving them a new source of revenue that they may have not had before, just because you're making it so much easier for people to book their venues. And even maybe traditionally venues that were used for very specific purposes, if they list on your platform, they can be booked out and used for many other different purposes. So you guys are kind of creating an additional revenue stream for these guys and helping them stay afloat, which is great.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I want to ask is, I know you guys are really young, but in terms of the inception of the company not being too long ago, but what's kind of like some milestones or achievements that you guys are especially proud of that you've been able to accomplish to this point?
That's a great question. I think that being able to create the app, found the company, and raise like just over a $15,000 pre-seed round in like a 2-month period, I think was a really great milestone that we made last year. And then being able to communicate like our product requirements to our developers so succinctly that they're able to build out like such a complex platform in just 4 months, I think was a second milestone. And then once we were finished with development and did our QA testing and kind of busted out a couple of bugs that kind of were initially present, launching and onboarding our initial handful of businesses before the pandemic hit was like our third big milestone. So now our fourth big milestone that we're looking for is, as we kind of go into these phases of reopening currently with the economy, being able to onboard an additional amount of businesses and really start like initializing those first interactions between creatives and businesses, and really starting to bring like our first revenues through the doors, because that's kind of something we're expecting back in February or March. But we're kind of forced to take a pause on that. So now that's what we're looking to start doing.
Yeah, it's great. Those are definitely some impressive milestones at this early stage, and I'm excited to see what's next in store for sure. I got to ask you, Brad. Yeah, for sure. I got to ask you. I think when you first pitched, or at least explained the StudioSesh idea to me, the first thing that came to my mind is this is a great opportunity for kind of the SoundCloud artist, independent artist, unsigned artist scene, especially for people who are just starting now, because I feel like the barrier to entry of becoming a musician has, it's significantly less than what it used to be, because a lot of people can just, set up makeshift studios in their homes and can start releasing music online. And
Exactly.
they're able to generate, a small fan base. And then with StudioSesh, they're able to, monetize their efforts, or at the very least, book some venues just to get their name out there and do some live performances in a way they couldn't before. What's your guys' marketing strategy? Either your digital marketing, social media marketing, or any kind of marketing strategy you guys have put together to reach this demographic?
That's a good question. I think right now we're still working on kind of building out our B2B marketing strategy. Most of the marketing strategy that we've already kind of owned on the B2B side has been email marketing and marketing through LinkedIn. And right now we're about to launch a social media marketing strategy primarily through Instagram. And we're also thinking about doing it through TikTok and Snapchat as well, because right now, especially like in the digital space, you know, a lot of artists, a lot of creators are on those three platforms specifically. And a lot of venue owners are on LinkedIn, right? So I think that like LinkedIn, Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok are kind of the three platforms that we're going to utilize to kind of initialize our first marketing campaign to kind of really get the word out there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I guess it's reasonable. The strategy first is do your B2B marketing, get the small businesses on board. So then when you're reaching out to the artist, it's easier to convince them to get on. Exactly.
Yeah. So that's our exact approach. Like over the course of the next 1 to 2 months, I think that like right now we have like 7 to 10 venues signed up, but yet again, like they haven't been able to get a listing like posted yet. So I think that we really want to grow that number over the course of the next 1 to 2 months and get, you know, a minimum of maybe 20 listings on there, you know, in San Francisco, South Bay, and maybe some other parts of the Bay Area as well, so that we kind of reach out to, you know, our first large cluster of artists. Like I think like right now we have maybe 50 to 70 artists that are signed up for the platform. I think that I think that once kind of we bring that to a larger scale, that we'll definitely be able to start kind of creating some demand and some traction with these venues. Because like what we've seen right now is because no platform currently exists for artists, like we will tell like creatives about this and they'll jump right up and they'll be like, yeah, like let me sign up, and they're really excited, and like onboarding them is definitely a lot easier. When we talk to businesses though, like they're definitely like, okay, like what kind of demographic is going to book my venue? What's your business model? Like how much money are you going to take? And they're obviously like a lot more focused with how much money we're going to bring through the door. So that's why we're kind of approaching venues first, and then reaching out to a very large amount of kind of early stage artists, so we're able to kind of bring the volume to these small businesses that they expect.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense, Brad. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks, of course, man. Thank you for coming and telling us about what you guys have done so far and your mission. It's been great. Before we go, Brad, anything that you want to leave us with, anything you want to share either about yourself or the business that you haven't gotten a chance to, anything like that, or are you guys looking for interns, or just anything that you want to drop before we conclude?
Definitely. Anyone that's listening that's, you know, really curious about StudioSesh and would love to learn more, I'd really encourage you to look at our website. It's studiosesh.com. That's STUDIOSESH.com. And also follow our Instagram account and our LinkedIn account and our Facebook account as well.
Awesome. Great stuff, Brad. I'm excited to see what's next.
Thanks so much, ARTEEN. Thanks so much for talking to me today.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you for the time. All right. Have a good one, man.
All right. You too. Goodbye.